If you work in utility safety or ops, you know the landscape changes fast. New safety solutions, updated grounding procedures, and the constant push for better leadership. It's a lot to keep up with. That's where Incident Prevention Magazine comes in. We are the industry's go-to source for real-world safety solutions. From in-depth articles on arc flash protection to ready-to-use tailgate topics for your crew, IP gives you the knowledge, insight, and strategy you need to get everyone home safe. Don't just react to the job, stay ahead of it. Subscribe today at incidentprevention.com. That's incidentprevention.com.
All right, welcome to the Utility Safety Podcast. I have with us Bill Martin, and we're going to have a little discussion. We were going back and forth via text and email the other day, and just had some thoughts and some different type of thinking that we wanted to bring to you guys. And so we figured we'd do that today, right before the holiday break here. And so, Bill, thank you so much for taking the time and welcome.
Thanks, Nick. This is a holiday week, so I appreciate that you're even still pushing the limits during the holiday week.
Oh yeah,
On your day off.
This is my go time. You know, people kind of are doing their thing and leaving me alone, and so I get time to catch up and do some fun stuff like this, which I always appreciate.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
no, I was just thinking, so Bill sent me some stuff. We were talking about frequency. The body is like a tuning fork. That's what we were talking about. And, something, he sent me an article and I had created a little video that, goes into like Nikola Tesla and some other things, where frequency is all around us and it's in the body. It's everywhere we look. And, Bill wants to kind of focus on this theme of synchronization, and which is important. And that's what we're talking about, how it relates in our work in the utility field, these teams syncing up. I know all three of us, with Brent Jeffries included, have talked about this. And that's kind of what our theme's going to be throughout this conversation. So I'm going to kick it off to Bill to start it.
All right, Nick. Listen, we're going to lose a bunch of people already. There's people listening that are thinking, "Oh, what is this frequency crap?" Right? I mean, and I understand it's not our fault, right? We're programmed for hundreds of thousands of years, or however long our species has been around. I think we've been around 70-some thousand, to be protective, and because we're protective, we build systems and everything around not to create better outcomes, and they're usually based on bad outcomes. Linemen like to say the safety rules are written in blood, and that's why the safety manual keeps getting thicker and never thinner. All right, so when we start talking about things like Nikola Tesla, it's out of the bandwidth of where we've been, so it's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But in that area where we learn the best is the area where we're a little uncomfortable. Not so uncomfortable that we're stressed, but not so comfortable that we're just sitting back having a beer watching a football team, right?
Yeah.
That stretch zone. And I think maybe this is a holiday week. Maybe we can help people enter that stretch zone today. We can't steal anybody's beliefs. But when they hear frequency and vibration, they're thinking, oh, this is this woo-woo stuff. But what did Nikola Tesla say, Nick? He said, if think of the secrets of the universe in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Mm-hmm.
Brent Jeffries talks a lot about the human energy, and when we start really looking at that, we have this energy. I mean, we're electrical. In this industry, we control electricity, right?
Yep.
We can't really control it. We try to manipulate it to go where we want it to go, and we have to be really careful of it. But we forget that we're energy. And if you enter a room with really bad energy, you feel it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just talked to a worker yesterday, and he said, I'm getting close to retirement. I said, well, how's that going? He said, well, at this point, I only do what they're telling me to do, and I keep my head down. I do just as much as I need to do to comply with what they want. And that's low energy.
Yeah.
Very little emerges out of that compliant state. So if we can figure out how to raise the level of energy in our team so we sync, and I think I might have told you this. So let's think of energy as like a swing, pushing a child on a swing. And you're pushing the child on a swing. You're going to step in, the child's already swinging, you're going to step in sync and in frequency with that swing. And if your listeners can imagine, you're pushing the swing. And what you're doing, there's already energy existing in that swing with the child on the swing. You're adding to it now, and the arc is getting bigger. And you might even hear laughter. You might hear laughter that wasn't going to occur, right? But if you step in out of sync, all forward momentum collapses. And if you're in the wrong place, you absorb all the energy of that swing as it stops. And I can't unsee this now. I see this in leaders, the command and control leader. Command and control works really good in a stable, predictive environment, where it's very predictable. And we talk about this we think it's a very predictable environment at a crosswalk with a sign that says walk. And as soon as the green sign says walk, you can watch any crosswalk. Everybody will look straight ahead or at their phones and walk across. Nobody will look. But the energy changes if you put a sign up that says check for traffic. Turns green, check for traffic. Everybody is now engaged in the moment and is now just widen their awareness. That's a different energy. And does that make any sense to you? I don't know.
Yeah, and going back to your earlier comment on frequency and vibration, I think when you said that someone walks in a room, and you have kind of a bad vibe, and that's culture, frequency, vibration, that's culture, that's and I thought of I don't know if you've ever seen those on a desk, right? It's like these pendulum balls, right? That hit back and forth, and yeah, if you take one and hit it out of sync, right, that whole thing just collapses. And something we talked about on the phone was, people, it's not their fault. It's you're kind of predispositioned to, just vibrate at a low frequency because the body wants to conserve calories, and you're looking around, until something alarming happens, and our ancestors, this is how they were, until a threat came in, whether that be a bear or whatever, right? You were kind of just going with the flow, low frequency. But so it's not necessarily people's fault, but I think that you need to make a conscious effort to change that, to create momentum, to continue that frequency with your team, that vibration with your team. And it's important because when you're out of sync, and there's a lot of ways you can get out of sync, not just in the team, right? But there's other things going on in each individual. I'm going to use it to that pendulum ball situation. If every single one of those balls on that pendulum were a person on your team, there's other outside forces, vibrations, right? Home life, family, financial stresses, substance abuse, right? That are causing the frequency to fall out of sync. And so it's equally as important to try to get everyone in sync, because the end result's great, right? We know that when things are in sync, when teams are in sync, there's less incidents, there's a sense of purpose, even more so, there's better work done. There's all positives that come out of this. So I know it may sound, you started where we said we may lose a lot of people, but I think for the folks that have stuck around to this point, I hope you can see the benefit of what we're talking about, because there is a lot of benefit to doing what Bill's talking about.
So it doesn't cost a cent. This is what's really, changing our mindset doesn't cost anything, right?
Right.
So imagine your pendulum balls. What's really cool about that, you drop the outside ball, and the end ball, 5 or 6 pendulum balls away, transfers that energy to that ball, and then it moves. If I put a marshmallow in the middle of those balls, that absorbs the energy. right?
Yep.
So if we think of, I do this demonstration with the tuning forks, the two tuning forks that are at the same frequency. I forget, it's like 432 or something hertz. And I hit one and I can silence it and we can hear that. But if I hit one and I silence it and there's another one right there, the other one's ringing. So the energy transfers to that other tuning fork without touching it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I did some, I had some biology background because I'm also a medical professional and alignment. Now, go figure that. I don't really understand that either. But so there's the periodic chart of the elements. Everything has an atomic number, right? And each element has a certain number of electrons that go around it in rings. And the outer ring is either full with 8 electrons or it's not. And when it's not, other elements can bond with its different, ionic bonds, covalent bonds. We don't really need to get into the chemistry, but water is H2O, and the two hydrogens bond, and then they bond to oxygen. They form a molecule, and that molecule has a certain frequency, right? Because electrons are in the outer ring, and they vibrate at a certain frequency. And what's cool about water, H2O, is I can speed those molecules up and turn that from a liquid to a gas. Or I can slow them down and turn it from a gas back to a liquid to a solid.
Mm-hmm.
And temperature changes the speed of the electrical vibration of those molecules. So temperature, also the invisible force of temperature, changes the closer we know the activities we do, but we can't see it, right? So we can't really see the vibration, but we can feel it because we all have an energy field about 5 yards wide. And when we get into somebody else's energy field, it's full of these different hormones. For example, if I tell you you're an idiot, you will release cortisol because it'll stress you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Cortisol, I think it's carbon 12, hydrogen 33, oxygen 5. I think if you look it up, C12H33O5, I think. But if I release oxytocin by telling Nick he's brilliant and very handsome young man, brilliant, and now you're releasing oxytocin and dopamine. And oxytocin is, I believe, carbon to a much higher number, nitrogen, hydrogen, sulfur, oxygen, right? It's a different chemical. It vibrates at a different frequency.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like having two different tuning forks. Cortisol is a lower. So I think we are human tuning forks because we're energy.
For sure. For
Right?
sure.
And if the energy you bring to your team determines on the energy that's there. Now, if I'm going to be command and control only because it's a stable environment and I tell you all what to do, that's great because you're all going to comply and do that. But if I'm in a situation where we need everybody at the top of their game, I need to release the chemistry and the frequency that creates that higher cognition, right? So I'll do it this way. So Nick, what the hell? I can't believe you did this podcast and it turned out so crappy, right? Why did you do that? And now you're going to justify and rationalize in defend mode.
Mm-hmm.
If I say, Nick, listen, Nick, I just watched that podcast. How did you see that working out? And what can we do to produce a better podcast? You've just bypassed all of that justification and rationalization to think forward in a different frequency. Did that cover? I don't know if that covered that. I'm trying to keep your listener to realize that this is objective reality, that we have this socially constructed reality and this imagined reality that if we just do what we're told, we'll stay in our bubble, we won't bother anybody else.
Yep.
But the deal is we are connected to everyone and everything around us, and we affect them every minute of every day.
Yep. And something I was thinking about, I listened to this woman, I think her name was Cody Sanchez, and she's kind of a self-made person, youngest partner at Goldman Sachs. And, she talks about, exactly what we're talking about, but just in a different way. And she's like, there's been studies, you put a high performer next to low performing people, and they will increase 15% just by that person being in the room.
Yes.
And so, that's proven. And that's frequency, that's vibration. Like you said, we're all those things in energy. And that's just a real world example. I mean, think about for the people that are listening to this, think about a team, um, or maybe a crew that you were on, and you had someone that just was a rock star, right? And you just wanted to be better because they were in the room being great. That's what we're talking about here. To boil it down, and there is frequency and vibration within all of us, and the energy that you bring and to the job site affects everybody, whether that's positive, negative, or benign. Just there, I remember as a kid growing up, I watched a show where this guy, would say, "You make your own luck," and I think that's true. I've always been a very positive person, and I've always had things just work out. And I have other friends that, they're like, "Oh, I got, such bad luck. Always bad things happen to me." And then what happens? Bad things happen to them, and you're sitting there and you're like, it's your mindset, it's your energy. You know what I
So,
mean?
so yeah, let's go there just for a minute, Nick. Let's look at objective reality. If our conscious brain operates on many affirmations, if and your listeners brush their teeth today, it's because they told themselves to. And I ask people, when I ask them if they can predict their future, almost everyone says no. But prediction is just another word for how we make things happen, right?
Yeah.
So like I'll ask them, like, you have a car, right, Nick?
Mm-hmm.
So did you just find yourself magically in the car, or did you plan to buy the car and end up with that car in the future?
Yep.
Right.
Plan to go
You
out
you
the
have a
door.
house. Did you just find yourself in the house, or did at some point in the future did you end up buying the house because you planned to buy the house? And then when I was at a coffee shop and this guy's drinking coffee, and I said, "Can you predict your future?" He said, "No." I said, "So how did you end up here?" Because I'm thinking at one point this was the future. You told yourself you're going to get a cup of coffee, and look, I'm here
And
talking to you. You're drinking coffee, right?
Yep.
So it's not our fault. It's this programming we're in, that everything has to be done for us. And we think a prediction is a lottery ticket. A prediction is just the way our brain works to make everything happen, because right now we're in the present moment.
Yep.
Oh, that's gone. Well, we're back in the present moment. That means every decision you make is a prediction in the future. And when we realize we are in 100% control of our next decision 100% of the time, regardless what we were dealt, then we do exactly what you just said. We decide if our luck is good or bad.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And something I think we talked about a couple days prior was, you buy a red Durango, and then you start noticing red Durangos on the road. And you're like, oh man, they're everywhere. Or,
They were there before, right?
they were there before the whole time, right? And you've changed your focus, to that, but nothing's changed, right? And so, I just think that I know it sounds maybe a little far out for your typical line worker, to hear this type of stuff, but understanding that, at a basic level, you affect the people around you, the team that you have based on your energy. That should be a simple concept that all of us can grasp. And if you understand it at a small level, and just start to enact some of these things in your day-to-day life, is going to pay dividends all around, whether it's personal or on the job site.
Can I tell you a story?
Yeah.
So some of your listeners are struggling, right? We have a mental health problem in not just in our industry, but in all construction. It's 5 times more likely to kill yourself than be killed by the work. It's
Which is sad.
And so a lot of what people are listening to, it's hard for them to be like, how do I get past this? So I'm flying home. The thing was from the Arizona conference this year, and I'm sitting next to a young guy, young, 35. Everybody's young that sits next to me, because I'm not. So I'm sitting next to this guy, and we get talking. He says, "Yeah," he says, "I had this great house. I was been a bachelor, but I met this girl, and we really hit it off. And she moved in, and it's just too small. But I felt so lucky to have this house. It had a view of, of a beach. It was awesome. So I really wanted to sell that to some deserving young couple because it was such a great slot. And we waited. We waited. We found just the right couple. They bought it. But now he says, now it sucks. He said, I can't find a house We're living in an apartment we don't want to live in, in an area we really don't want to be in. And this sucks. He said, why is it I do all the right things and the wrong thing happens, And I said to him, this is really interesting. I said, you don't see it. And he said, what? I said, well, outcomes, there's only 4 outcomes: wanted, unwanted, expected, or unexpected. Right now, you're feeling like you're in an unwanted outcome, but none of them suck. We had the suck. The suck doesn't even exist until we had it. We generate our own emotion, and we make it suck. And if you're in that energy, getting out of your apartment every day, you won't even talk to the woman down the hall whose in-laws are about to sell their house outright, and it's the perfect house for you. I said, if you change your energy, so this is an experience, and this apartment is just the path to your house. The path for your house isn't exactly as you pictured it. You imagined selling this house, buying another house, but that didn't happen because your house may not be ready for you yet. So you are now in a path. This path is to your house, unless you add the suck, and you will miss every opportunity in this path that leads you to that next house.
Well, and think about that. I mean, even on the job site, right? So let's say someone comes to work, they're hungover, they had an argument with the wife, or something, and they're pissed, and they're taking it out on everyone on that line crew, and you're like, oh, this guy's an idiot, whatever you want to throw out there. You're pissed off, but you're allowing his energy to affect you and to affect the team, and it's only going to progress worse. You're going to create that pendulum shift, to a higher frequency in suck, but you have the choice.
So 100%. So that guy's the marshmallow, right? In those balls, he's the tuning fork that's out of sync with your tuning fork. And what we do, we feel it. So we feel 200,000 years of software programming, that biology, like, this guy's an idiot, right?
Yep.
But if we can unhack that biology, just close your eyes, just do something, count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and don't let that person decide your energy. You just become curious. Hey, Nick, you're like a disruptor machine today. What's going on? What's beyond what's not? You're not reacting to him. You want to know what's driving what's happening to him. Now we start a curiosity, a discover conversation. Look, dude, listen, you're in the bucket today. This is a weak signal for me that let's keep you out of the bucket for a little while until you got your shit together. You know what I mean? Because that conversation doesn't happen if we allow our biology to control our decision.
Right, because you just shut down that conversation. You write them off as, hey, that guy's a SOB. That guy's just angry today, and you shut it down, and you shut that vibration path off to him where you could fix it.
Right. It's the 2 linemen are on the ground, looking up at a lineman in the bucket, and they're whispering to each other, "Why the hell's he doing it that way?" Right. And it's just like when that guy's they're being the jerk on the ground, and 2 linemen come in, man, Joe's an asshole today. What's going on? But we need to talk to Joe, right? But we don't. We talk to each other about Joe because we don't want to make Joe worse, because it makes our experience worse. But instead,
you taint the pool.
So what we do is we choose the response. And listen, this isn't really on topic, but I'm concerned because our frequency and our ability to resonate depends on having a really clear consciousness. And in that river we landed in that had our language and our parents, all those things we didn't choose. Right. Was alcohol, for example. We didn't choose alcohol. It's in the river, but we use it to change our consciousness. And now marijuana and drugs and steroids and all these things, because we think we have a caffeine deficiency, an alcohol deficiency, a drug deficiency. We are born really pretty perfect. Monarch butterflies fly to Mexico with gathering together with no cell phones, and it takes 4 generations to get there. And and they're not smoking weed, right? So I think this concept, it's not our fault, but we need to. I think this is a time for an awakening, and that's why this may not fit this podcast completely, Nick. And if you want to delete it, that's fine. But the reality is, these people in this industry that are doing their work are the most valuable resource to this industry. You
Oh yeah.
this work is a transaction between the worker, the contractor, the company, the client, to simplify it. Take away any part of that transaction, there is no work. So we need them to be at their highest. And if I ask them this quite often, young people, because they are the most valuable resource, they're the future. The future of this industry is the people listening to this podcast. So imagine if you had a racehorse, they're listening, that paid all of your wages and your expenses. How would you treat it? Right? Everyone tells me I treat it like gold. So when we start treating ourselves like the racehorse we are, everything changes. We operate at higher efficiency, higher cognitive frequency. We active collective intelligence. But when we continue to escape by adjusting our consciousness, I had a guy in a course I was just teaching, young guy, 25, he's drinking this high pack energy drink. I get everybody's pulse with a pulse oximeter. His heart rate was 95.
Holy.
That energy drink is changing his physiology right there in front of me. And your body doesn't really recognize the difference between running from a lion and a fast heart rate. So you're firing off chemistry and frequency in you with that energy drink that is, but you don't, I mean, it's not like you need it sitting there in a classroom. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So anyway, that might be off topic, but I think when we start talking about frequency vibration, we adjust our consciousness, which adjusts our frequency, and we deaden it. And honestly, you know, and I'm not just speaking, and you know me, Nick, for those that don't know me, I had a brain tumor when I was 38. So I 20 hours of brain surgery. I stopped drinking coffee and alcohol 30 years ago. And if I really needed it, I should be dead. Right. And now I'm not drinking coffee, energy drinks, soda, or alcohol. And I'm in better shape right now than I was 10 years ago. And I'm learning, I'm testing it by learning languages. And I don't really know, I'm an N of one. So I don't know if these languages, if it's because of what I'm doing, but I know a placebo is 30% effective. So I don't care if it's actually helping, as long as I believe it does. Right?
Yeah.
Henry Ford said this. He said, if you think you can and you think you can't, or you think you can't, you're right.
Yep.
That was it.
Yep.
Oh, so I know that was kind of a mixed
no,
bag there, Nick.
No, I guess I'll unpack a little bit of that, at least from my perspective. You know, I mean, I think, I don't drink, we don't buy alcohol in the house. I do drink coffee in the morning. I do not drink, oh, nice. Yeah, I do drink, carbonated water, sparkling water. I don't do energy drinks or anything like that. I'll tell you that, one of the best things you have that kind of sets your frequency, the thing that controls, yeah, is your brain, 100%. And, all of the things that you're taking, especially energy drinks, alcohol, drugs, whatever they are, those affect your vibration, your frequency in your body and your brain ultimately, which is going to alter how you interact with people, the world, all of those things. And I will say the thing I've noticed, and I hope I'm wrong, but it does seem like this industry loves their energy drinks, and they take them when they're working long hours and they're in hot, warm situations, which is probably the worst when you can take them. And I mean, at the bare minimum, it's messing with your frequency and yourself.
So listen, I'll go another step further. It's making you stupid. All right. So and listen, I was at 38, I had that brain tumor, then I went back to the alignment. I didn't drink coffee as alignment. So I get it. I need, you're working a lot of hours. I worked better not being bounced around by the coffee than I did. I was more level by not drinking coffee. But here's the reality. So your brain is 78% water, right? I drink mineral water. I drink sparkling mineral water because that's all I drink. That and healthy smoothies, and I know I can screw up the conduction of that water with alcohol and make me think slower.
Mm-hmm.
If you look up dehydration, caffeine dehydrates you.
Yes,
dehydration can have the same effect as having a few drinks of alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
You can look that up. So if I drink a lot of coffee and I'm working, I'm peeing dark yellow. I'm dehydrated, and my brain conduction is slower. But if I can improve the mineral content and stay hydrated and not alter my consciousness, my brain conduction is wicked fast. So
Yep.
at a time at my age when I should be slowing down, I'm learning 5 languages, Nick. And I don't know if it's the placebo effect. I don't care. I don't care. What I'm realizing is I'm I'm training athletically. I just skinned up Whiteface Mountain yesterday, right? It 2,500 vertical feet. I do it at 6 in the morning when they let me do it. I sustained a heart rate over 160 for like an hour, right? And I'm 69. My resting heart rate's somewhere around 50, right? So am what is emerging for me is a result of how I'm treating my racehorse,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And I think what we have an entire young generation that needs to think at the highest cognitive level to solve problems we haven't even invented yet.
Right.
We're going to have the most that our young generation of utility worker is going to have to solve the most complex problems of any generation that ever has, because we are becoming a more and more complex society.
Yes.
Even the
Yes.
utilities. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, I was thinking, I mean, the number one thing that you could do for what we're talking about, you can start if you're like, hey, Bill, where do I start? And what I'm hearing is, and not necessarily what I was thinking when we started this, was yourself, right? And that should be pretty clear. That's kind of the answer most times in life. But start with yourself, and you get yourself right, and you bring that to work, right? And being I'll just put it under the label of high performer. But if you get yourself correct, you come to work, you're going to improve people's frequency and vibration and output just by being a better version of yourself and coming to work. And then you work on round two, which is the team, you know?
So here's what we need to do. We need to focus on the next step, right? We get overwhelmed looking at the future, how far in the future. When you put your blinders on, you might get that PhD, but you're going to sacrifice every opportunity and relationship between here and that PhD, right?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, linemen who have worked more than 8 years have a PhD in line work, but that's a whole nother podcast. All right.
Yeah.
So what we add the suck. So we think we're victims of the system. And if that guy wasn't such an ass, or if that supervisor, well, that's them controlling us. But
Mm-hmm.
we can, and it's not our fault again, Nick. It's that we were hunted before we were hunters, right? So it's that protective software in us that's trying to put that safe space around us to protect us from all this crap.
Mm-hmm.
We forget that we are in control of that. They aren't. So it takes that 5 second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then actually respond with your response, not with the one they want. Right? I ask people if they're often, you ever been stuck in traffic, and they say, oh yeah, all the time. And I say, well, you recognize you've never been stuck in traffic. They say, what do you mean? I said, well, you are the traffic. You think you're a victim of something all around you, but you are it. And it's nothing is happening to you. You just are what's happening. And so we can get all bent out of shape about being stuck in traffic, but it's just traffic. We can get all bent out of shape about that supervisor. I laugh now when people get really, really rude to me. It makes me smile. And I'm like, wow. I had this one big guy behind me. I didn't see him. I was talking to a registered person with the clerk. And he's got 2 12-packs. He's like twice as wide, big guy, foot taller than me. And he's got carrying 2 12-packs. And he goes, and I said, oh, sorry, dude. I turn and look. Huge dude. He says, oh, I'm sorry, dude. I didn't see him. He says, yeah, beat it. He says to me. All right, beat it. And his face is all twisted up, looking at me. Big guy, big bully. And I look up at him. I'm looking up at like really pretty, because he's much taller than me. And I just smiled, and I did the 5 second thing. I just smiled at him, didn't say a word for 5 seconds. And you can see him become a little bit visually uncomfortable. And I said, oh, dude, I said, I love people like you. The spring fills up his face, and he leans down right into my face. He says, yeah, I love people like you too. And I smiled, and I said, look, dude, I said, now we're in love. Isn't that amazing? He turned cherry red. It wasn't his predicted response as a bully isn't what I gave him.
Yep. Yep.
He wouldn't even turn and look at me. He turned cherry red. He did
Funny.
because he didn't know what to do. But I choose my response, right? I
Yep.
and I'm not good at it. I still fail because we're humans.
Oh yeah. It's
But
hard.
I like what you just said, Nick. We can start this right now. Just take 5 seconds, and instead of letting that person decide your response, you decide your response. And I like this one this I have several that I frame so that I can respond when I'm triggered. And I can say, look, Nick, I'm glad you're comfortable enough to tell me that I'm a stupid old baby boomer. I said, no, I don't really feel like I am, but I'm curious why you might think so. Now,
Hmm.
what I just did was I don't care you don't get to decide what I believe. I do. You don't get to decide my
Right.
response. When we recognize that we're not victims of anything, we are just what's happening all the time. And our next decision changes the future. So when you take that next step, here's the quote: at every step forward, you change, and the world changes around you because you change the world.
Yeah.
And I don't need anything to make that true. I don't need money, nothing.
No, I agree. And I think that should be your focus. At least in 26, I know I'm gonna make a more valued effort towards that is just, start with yourself, start with your inputs to yourself. Um, so your physical inputs as well as your mental, and just watch how that affects around you. It's all you have to do. That's your first step.
So you're 100% again. You're don't tell yourself anything you don't want your brain to know, right? Your mind is not your brain. You can take your mind on a trip anywhere you want. And that changes the brain structure because it creates new circuits. So I don't tell myself I'm getting older. I don't tell myself I'm angry. I don't tell myself those things because if you say I'm angry, your brain says, okay, I can release cortisol for you. Thank you very much. That's easy, right?
Yep. Yep.
If you and I are going swimming and I say I can't swim, my brain says, "Oh, I use 25% of all the air you breathe and all the food you eat helping you swim. You just said you can't, right?" So your brain is designed to do exactly what you tell it. So, but it takes practice. It's like the violin. It won't happen instantaneously because we're programmed. This whole matrix we live in is, as Brent would say, has programmed us to be reactive and defensive.
100%. Yeah.
And we have to choose not to be. I have to try to understand why you're trying to make me be reactive and defensive.
Yep.
Dude, I want to op in my highest level, the zone of optimal performance all the time. That's where I'm working to get to. And you're trying to drag me out of that space. Why?
Mhm.
What can you do to help me stay in this space? And
Yeah.
and listen, I appreciate doing this today, Nick, because what we're talking about is the meat and potatoes of how we move forward. Nobody is coming to save us. It's
Yep.
15 years of SIFs, mental health in the crapper. It's up to us.
Yeah, things haven't, with social media, like we've talked about in the past, and all the, inputs, they have a solution, for everything going on in your life. And yeah, things aren't necessarily getting better, but there's some easy free steps you can do today, right, to start that journey, uh, to vibrating at a higher frequency. And um, something I was thinking about was just, you know, this industry that folks here, are in this is only gonna accelerate, right, with the amount of generation needed, um, the distribution of that generation needed to support where the country's going. Um, Linemen and line workers are never, I mean, they're going to only become more increasingly important, and the job and the work is going to become ever more demanding than it already is because that grid's going to have to bare minimum, 4 to 6x over the next 5 years. So what does that mean? More demand, more stress, more work, more teams, right? And so, um, doing what we're talking about is such a simple step that can help the experience become easier, fun, more productive work, better team, better relationships within that team. Um, why would you not want to be a part of that?
Well, so, as far as we know, we get one shot at this. And we're pretty self-destructive when we get into that bad chemistry, when we're letting cortisol run our life.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do a plug here for a second. You don't have to leave this in if you don't want it, but that's why I've been to Africa 4 times, right? I climbed Mount Kenya. I've been to Kilimanjaro. I've been to Everest Base Camp. And I'm looking right now for 6 to 10 people between now and mid to late January to sign up for June 15th to take, if they want you, people are looking to reset, do a real mindset reset, put themselves into uncertainty, hike to 16,300 feet in the Mount Kenya National Park in Africa. I'm looking to see if I can find people to start helping people change that mindset. Something, because what happens, we are a sum total of our experience. That experience for me changes me every time. And when I come back, I'm not the same person as when I left. I see things completely different. So, you can leave an email from me or something if they want details of this. I'd love to get 8 to 10, 6 to 10 probably is enough. It's a one price for everything. They just pay their flight, their visas, and their global rescue insurance because we're going to 16,000 feet.
Yeah.
Which you can't do in the United States, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So can you see where sometimes it takes a jolt, they're drinking jolt.
Yeah. Right. To get out of the programming.
But let's do something physical that outside of the realm of what you thought was possible. And once you rule out the impossible, everything else becomes possible.
I agree.
That's the step you just talked about. It's something we have to make a decision for ourselves.
Yeah, and I think, going back to the whole conversation of what can we do on Monday to change. And the easiest step that we just talked about today, if you got nothing else, is make your own luck. Watch what inputs you're putting into your body, vibrate at a higher frequency, and come to work. That's all you have to do is step one, and that's simple.
100%. There's books written on flow. There's books written on the zone of optimal performance. We see football teams that are in sync win, right? Yep. Orchestras that are in sync sound beautiful. And when the French horn's out of tune, now I can fix that. So when we start raising ourselves to do exactly what you just said, we'll end up all syncing at a higher frequency. We'll be adding energy to the swing, not collapsing all forward momentum.
Exactly. And I literally just rewatched, if you haven't seen The Last Dance that talks about, the Chicago Bulls and their epic run. And it's awesome. I've watched it. This is the 3rd time now. But they talk about Rodman when he came part of the team, and Jordan. They have a lot of great content in there that you didn't get from the newspapers and the articles written about the Bulls during this time. But Rodman wanted to go before a major game. He wanted to go to Vegas, and Phil Jackson and understood Rodman. Michael understood Rodman. They said, let him go, but you be back here by this time. And he went out and he partied and did his thing. And you'd think that was counterproductive to what the team was doing, but they understood him enough, his frequency enough to say, he's got to go do this. He's a free spirit. He came back and fell right back in sync. And I think, understanding how championship teams work is a science all in itself, but that's what we're talking about here is frequency, vibration. When you get that together, great things are possible. And you saw it in the Chicago Bulls, saw it in the Blackhawks, and I know I'm only talking about Chicago teams because, I'm from here, but those were, 87 Bears. When you get that type of stuff, you see amazing things happen.
So it's real. So the Millennium Bridge in London over the Thames River around 2000, I think, they built a 325-meter bridge across the Thames River. Mm-hmm. And it was a really an architectural genius, basically. It was a beautiful bridge. It's a footbridge. Mm-hmm. And what they didn't take into account was that between 0.5 and 1 hertz frequency of a human sidestep. All right. They walked forwards. And in 1903, there's a bridge somewhere in Europe that actually the synchrony of the military marching in step actually took down a bridge because they resonated at the same frequency of the old bridge. And so to this day, the military isn't supposed to march in sync in a bridge because of the frequency, right? Because they don't want to of the resonant frequency. So this the Millennial Bridge, what happened is that when they opened it, people started walking, and when they got enough people on the bridge, that little bit of side sway caused them all to sink in stabilizer. So now you're looking at everybody actually moving left to right a little bit to sink, and then it wobbled even more. They increased the energy that was already there, and they had to shut the bridge down in 2 days.
Wow.
It cost $5 million, I think, if I remember, to put in dampeners to a 0.5 and 1 hertz frequency. So what I'm talking about here isn't magic, isn't mysticism. There's huge, when you're pushing that swing, you're adding amplification. When we get in sync, a team in sync has a higher power, enough to take down bridges, right?
Yep.
So it's not just a metaphor. It's actually a physical. It's a physical thing. It's a physical characteristic of synchrony. And leadership synchrony is not something I've seen. I see a lot of command and control still lingering in our industry, which creates compliance in synchrony. But compliance is not. When we spend all of our time to reduce errors and prevent incidents, we end up at zero. But that's the down arrow is fixing all those down arrows, the errors and the mistakes. But we need an up arrow too. We need insights, innovation, high level thinking. So if we're just in compliance mode, we stay at zero. And we've been at zero for 15 years, below zero, actually.
Right. No, I agree. And like I said, I appreciate you having this conversation as well. And, Bill's planning on being, I believe, in Orlando to talk about some of this stuff. He's working on, a session for the IP conference coming up in May. And I highly recommend you check him out. We're going to try to do a new setup, for him speaking with the kind of staggered chairs where folks can be involved looking at each other. So it's going to be unique. And I think that Bill's a great person to spend some time with and make you think outside the box, because a lot of times you hear the same noise, in the industry. And I think it's refreshing to hear something else and understand that there's a lot more to this safety thing than what you're hearing. So
I appreciate the plug, Nick. So we need all of it. So safety, intelligence, love emerges in the space between us. The space between all of the things we're doing is what creates whatever that next thing is. That vibration on the bridge occurred from everybody there. Remove any part of that, there is no vibration on the bridge, right? So we need to be willing to test and learn and try new things. At the same time, stay stable in the things we know we're good at, right? So we need both. We need FR clothing. We need FR clothing to protect us from the catastrophic failure, but we need to figure out how not to have it.
Yep.
Also, so if the control or system you're building emerges from the transaction between us. We aren't building a system to control us. We are trying to create the best possible synchrony connection to build the system and control we need.
Yep.
And if you and I get together and we change some decisions, the system and control that shows up is different than the one where we just ignore each other.
Right.
So it's there's a symbiotic relationship there. I think you mentioned that earlier, that between us, and intelligence isn't in us. It emerges in the space between us from the quality of our interactions and transactions.
Yep.
If you live in a really bad environment, it's hard to produce those transactions. So environment is the key. Creating the healthy, happy environment sets the foundation to allow really quality interactions to occur. And that's the front end that we need to work on. And that's where we gotta look at how we're adjusting our physiology with all these energy drinks and caffeine.
Well, and that's what we're talking about. I think that first step, right, is affecting yourself, your inputs to yourself, your vibration within yourself. If you bring that to the situation of your team, right, and do nothing else but that, you're going to have an effect on your team whether know it or not, right? And you get enough people doing that, and you start getting in sync, you're going to see it at a magnitude scale larger. The positive effects of what we're talking about.
And if anyone wants to have a conversation, I mean, I have conversations with people all over the world now on this. People from Australia and Germany, and LinkedIn has kind of made the world small, right?
Oh yeah.
And social media. And if anybody wants to have a conversation about this on how to get started, I'm happy to have that conversation, right? Because sometimes it just takes a conversation to do the first step, because it's that one step. You just have to take the next step. That's it.
Yep.
And then as soon as you do, there's a whole nother world available. All new doors are in that next step, but you can't see them until you take it.
Yep. You got to put one foot in front of the other. And well, I appreciate you having this conversation, Bill. And like I said, he'll be in Orlando at the IP conference, so I highly recommend you check him out. And we'll put his email in the description. So if you guys want to reach out or you're interested in the trip that Bill's putting together in June for Africa, it'll be there for you to reach out to him, and check out his article series in Incident Prevention Magazine, where he kind of dives deeper into this stuff. And Bill, thank you so much for being with us, and appreciate you spending time.
Well, thank you, Nick. And Nick, life's a social experiment, and I appreciate the organic nature of what you're trying to do here. We didn't have a script, so this is what emerges from this podcast is what emerges, and we need the feedback loop from your audience would be great to see if they want more of this type of format.
Yeah, and when you have organic conversations, my opinion is, and I think it's accurate, is you get what we're talking about, high vibration, high frequency conversation versus something that's just scripted with questions and following through and droning on. This to me feels more authentic and is hopefully more digestible, so folks can take this information and do something with it, run with it, because you're the future and you're the next step. Take this information and run with it.
I'll second that. Thank you very much. It's been fun.
Thank you. All right, well, we look forward to the next one, and obviously we'll see you in Orlando in May.
Sure.
Thanks, Bill.
The views, information, and opinions expressed during this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Utility Business Media and its employees. It is strongly recommended that you discuss any actions or policy changes with your company management prior to implementation.